Look, y'all, as always, I'm gonna try to get out of the way so that basically get off the track, right? Because this locomotive that's about to come down the train tracks. But today we're gonna preach, we're gonna teach, and we're gonna act on social justice. So without further ado, I want to introduce to some, right? But it's a woman who needs very little introduction, and that is one of our very own prizes and just social justice warriors right here in Dallas, and that is none other than the Reverend Danielle Ayers from the Friendship West Baptist Church as the social justice pastor. Good to have you, Reverend Ayers.
Good morning. Thank you so much for another invitation. It's always good to be invited back to someone's home a second time. So that means I didn't wear my welcome out. I didn't offend anyone. So thank you so much for having me again.
You offended them. They weren't supposed to be here anyway.
Yes,
so it's so good to have you. So good to have you. Oh, we have so many more people jumping in on the back end. But I want to just get started. You laid out for us so many different ways in which Friendship West is getting involved in turning out people to vote. But I wanted to dig into a few of them and allow you to sort of just help people understand and exactly what it takes to pull some of this stuff off, right? And so one of the things that you talked about is just deep voter engagement and making sure that people are registered to vote and people know when to vote. Can you just talk to us about how Friendship West is going about doing that, not just for your congregation, but for the community writ large?
Yeah, sure. So I think in terms of the registering to vote, we have just really partnered with a lot of other organizations who are already doing voter registration. So I always try to tell congregations, oftentimes they can look at a Friendship West and say, well, they're a mega church, so they have the resources to go out and do all of this work. And I always remind people, we might be mega church when it comes to committed folks to really come out and do the work. We are small. And so for me, it's always about who is already doing this work, because we don't have to lead. We don't have to be in charge. If someone is already doing it, how do we go along and journey along with other people and do the work together? So for voter registration this time around, this election season, we're partnering with various organizations going to, gas stations, going to grocery stores, just going to places where people are. And we're trying to be targeted in that, where we'll try to go to low census count areas, hard to count areas where it's probable that more people than not are not registered to vote. So we try to really be targeted in our approach and who we're trying to register to vote. And coming up, I think probably this weekend, we're going to do no contact voting. So we were able to they're like door hangers that are voter registration cards that we'll just go around and put on doors so people can just grab that, fill it out, and mail it back in. In terms of education, so for me, it's definitely the registering people to vote, and it's the turnout. But part of the turnout is not just, for me at least, it's not just loading up people in vans and getting them to the polling locations. That's critically important, but I also like inform voters, because I think we walk them through an entire process of how to be informed, where to find information. It makes them ongoing voters, because we need to get to where we're not just voting in presidential year or when it's something highly contested. We need to vote anytime the voting polls are open. We need to be there. So for us, it's also the education piece. And so right now what we're focusing on is reminding people when early voting starts and where the early voting centers are. Also, it's this idea around this ballot that we know is going to be very lengthy. If you live in Dallas County, your ballot is going to be lengthy. Depending on where you are, what city you're in, it could be 30 pages. Because you have to remember that the elections that took place, that were supposed to take place in May, have been moved to this November election. So we're really trying to encourage people to print your ballot out early. It'll be your sample ballot, fill it out ahead of time, and you can take that with you, and it can make it go a little faster. Other than that, you will be there longer, because you'll have to individually go down the ballot, because there's no more straight ticket voting in the state of Texas. So we're trying to make sure people understand that and know that you cannot vote straight ticket. You will have to individually go down each race, as well as, depending on where you are, you may have a bond election going on. You may have school board elections, city council, state, as well as presidential. So part of it is like really make sure people understand it's going to be different. We have new machines this time around. So for us, it's always what do people need to know and what do we have to keep reinforcing? So I just tell people at this point too, to also be patient with yourself in this new process and not get irritated and frustrated and not vote. So we try to let people, let them know ahead of time, here are some possible changes that you may not be aware of, and make sure you're prepared to do that. So not only go vote, but we try to make sure we direct people to election guides so that they can see a comparison of each candidate, what they stand for. If it's a bond election or an amendment, we try to direct them to an election guide that shows them, if you vote yes, this is what this means. If you vote no, this is what this means, right? So they're clear about whether you say yes or no, what's the bottom line? How does that impact my life from day to day? So education is very, very important. So we try to do that through infographics. We do that through short videos that we're releasing. We try to do them at least once a week. We try to release a video that educates people on different subject matters, whether it's voter safety, what you can do to be safe, or what Dallas County is doing to make sure when you come to the polling location that it's going to be equipped in a way that makes you safe. And if you don't feel safe coming in at all, then you do have the option of doing curbside voting. So we just try to make sure that we are over communicating what people need to know about this upcoming election, as well as kind of also bringing it home to say, this is how elections have consequences. And we just look at, the passing of Justice Ginsburg. What does that now mean in terms of a new justice sitting in the Supreme Court? That's going to, we are now experiencing the consequence of a 2016 election. Right. And so this new, and that he's so bent on having this person announced Friday or Saturday, what does that mean for generations to come? So this is in real time that elections do have consequences. I think we have to just do more conversation around why it's so important to vote, as opposed to allowing people just to simply say, I'm not voting. It's the lesser of two evils, because that is just not a good way in which to view what it means to go vote, right? Because this is not a case, in my opinion, this is not a case of the lesser of two evils. When you look at the ways in which this current administration has governed people, how the policies, and just really creating a fascist society, right? I think no, and I look at the fact that Angela Davis, who we never really hear from when it's elections, right? That she has even released a video saying the importance of voting, because it's only one candidate is going to allow us to continue to engage in justice work, to continue to push this nation to be what it's supposed to be. And another candidate is going to shut it down. So I think for us, it's all about how do we just break it down for people, put it out there in print form, how we do it on, again, I mentioned last time, take time on Sunday morning, allow some time to talk to the people, to let them know what they need to know. So of course, this all goes back to, the interpretation that we have of Jesus, right? One who doesn't separate body from the soul. And so, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I think you about to sneak a preach on us, Reverend?
No, but I'm just saying, but that's important, right? Because I think it depends on, like Thurman says, many and varied are the interpretations. So what interpretation do we have? Because if it's not the right interpretation, we're not equipping people to understand why, as Christians, you very much should be involved and engaged in elections, right? And I think about Ralph Reed when he did his interview last week with the Washington Post. He was clear. White evangelicals, the message they give is to register to vote often, and make sure you always stay in contact with your elected official. And I'm reading into what that means. Stay in contact with your elected official doesn't mean send a letter saying, you need your potholes fixed. He's talking about sitting at the table and writing public policy. So I think we have to be clear about the Jesus that we are preaching and teaching about, so that people can, they're equipped to know that, yes, this is part of our faith. This is what faith in the public square looks like. This is what faith in action really looks like. So that's really what we try to do. In addition to the poll workers, we're still trying to get people to also work the polls, because it's one thing, register to vote, show up to vote, be educated, but we need to anticipate the headwinds, voter intimidation, and we need to make sure we are in our own polling locations, working the locations to make sure it's a free and fair election inside the polls. And we're also looking to bring in poll monitors. So those will be people who would be 100 feet back from the polling location, who would just kind of, watch and see what is taking place, what is going on. So if it has has to be reported, somebody can report what they are seeing. And you can either be at the poll, you can be a roving poll monitor, which means you may go check around each location, because sometimes they close polling locations, don't tell people. So you may see that. Do you need to report that and say this location is closed, but there's no signage to let people know where to go next? Or it's also be an opportunity to poll monitor online. We may have people looking at Dallas County election website, Fort Worth. Are they posting changes? Do people need to know this stuff in real time? How do we get this out to everyone via social media? So it's the working inside the poll, but it's also the outside, how we can also just try to make sure that this election season is as smooth as possible, because we anticipate a lot of headwind, as we can already see some stuff that's taking place already. And we don't want people frustrated and just, irritated, because it becomes kind of cumbersome for a number of reasons. Not bad information, people not understanding what their voting rights are. We try to also equip people with knowing their voting rights when you show up. If someone tries to turn you away, what questions to ask, what numbers to call. So people just need to be fully equipped all around, not just candidates, but know their own rights as they go into the polling locations, because you never know what you might face once you walk into that polling location.
Thank you so much, Reverend Ayers. Let me tell y'all something. If you did not have a plan or know how to make a plan to vote in this election, or to get your community engaged in voting in this election, Reverend Ayers has just laid out multiple ways. She just laid out multiple ways for your congregation to get involved. She said, first, you don't have to do it all on your own. Find those local organizations and partner with people who are already working. Then she said, we have to educate our voters, right? So make sure that people know where to go, how to get there, what they're voting for, what their ballot is going to look like. We have the power to do this. The other thing she said is make sure we have prepared voters. Make sure those voters have a plan, and they have ways to make that plan and make the path easy and straight for them. She also talked about preaching and teaching on voting. I always say that pastors, whether you have a congregation of 2 or 20,000, you have a captive audience at least once a week. So you should be saying something, right, about voting and how it connects to our faith. And then she even went a step further and talked to us about making sure we protect our vote. How do we ensure that we have our people from our congregations, our neighborhoods, our communities who are all working the polls, making sure people aren't getting intimidated and making sure people aren't getting turned away. I think I caught it all, Reverend Ayers. Did I get it?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. Reverend Ayers ain't going nowhere. She's right here in the city of Dallas. That means she rocks with Dallas Black clergy. So she's going to be right here on the squad. And make sure that you follow her and follow the things that she's doing. One of the things that I also want to share that I love about Dallas Black clergy is all that Reverend Ayers just laid out for us. Dallas Black clergy has launched a voter engagement campaign called Vote First. That is Vote First. You can go to voteFIRST.com. And right now you can select links. You can get registered to vote on voteFIRST.com. You can get educated on who's on your ballot on voteFIRST.com. You can make a plan to vote on voteFIRST.com. Most importantly, you can click a link and you can pledge to vote. You can pledge to vote in this election season, not just on November 3rd, but pledge to vote on the first day of voting for Texas, which is October 13th. Now that changes depending on what state you're in, but I'm talking about Texas right now, and October 13th is the first day for us to vote, and we want people turning out in mega numbers. So go to votefirst.com, make sure you look through the site, pledge to vote. We'll also have tools for you to be able to preach and teach about voting in your congregation.